Chapter 1. Shadows of Power. Luca Moretti sat in his office, the city lights casting long reflections across the polished mahogany desk. He looked every bit the Mafia king everyone feared, sharp in tailored black suits, his dark eyes scanning the files before him with meticulous precision. Power ran in his veins, and yet, as he leaned back in his chair, a hollow ache lingered inside him. The loyalty of his men and the control over his empire could not fill the void that gnawed at his soul. Outside, the city hummed with life, oblivious to the dangerous world he ruled. Luca was used to this isolation. Trust was a currency he could not afford. Emotions were weaknesses, and yet, tonight, the emptiness seemed heavier than usual. Across town, Sofia Rinaldi arranged medical supplies at the charity clinic where she worked. Her days were filled with kindness and small victories, tending to the sick and the needy. She loved helping people because it made the world feel less cruel, even if only for a moment. Sofia moved with quiet grace, her dark hair tied back in a loose braid, her eyes always scanning for someone who might need a gentle touch or a word of encouragement. Her path first crossed with Luca's when a man arrived at the clinic with a minor injury. He tried to hide the bruises on his knuckles and the tension in his shoulders. Sofia's instincts immediately sensed there was more to his story. As she cleaned the wound and applied a soft cloth to soothe the swelling, their eyes met. The man remained silent, but there was an intensity in his gaze that unsettled her slightly. He carried an air of authority and danger that Sofia had only read about in news reports. Luca, on the other hand, felt a strange pull. There was something different about this woman who looked at him without fear, who treated him with the gentleness of someone who cared deeply for others. He noticed the subtle strength in her hands as she worked and the warmth that radiated from her presence. It was unsettling and compelling all at once. Their conversation was brief, filled with formalities and polite questions, yet beneath the words, an unspoken curiosity began to form. Sofia wondered who this man was and why he felt like a storm contained in human form. Luca wondered why he felt drawn to a woman who had no reason to notice him, much less care for him. As he left the clinic that night, the cool air brushing against his face, Luca could not shake the memory of her eyes. He returned to his empire with the same ruthless precision as always, but something within him had shifted. For the first time in years, the walls he had built around his heart felt fragile. Sofia did not know the man she had just treated was Luca Moretti. The name whispered in fear across the city. She only knew that a new feeling stirred inside her, a curiosity she could not explain. Neither of them realized that this brief encounter was the first step toward a connection that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, power, and redemption. Chapter 2. A chance encounter. The city's evening air carried a crisp chill as Sofia walked home from the clinic, her bag slung over one shoulder. Her mind wandered over the day's patients and the quiet moments of connection she had shared with each of them. The streets were alive with laughter and the hum of traffic, yet something in the back of her mind tugged at her attention. She could not shake the memory of the man with the intense eyes and the storm behind them. Luca Moretti had not planned to cross her path again, yet fate seemed insistent. He had been at a nearby restaurant for a private meeting, and as he left, he noticed her walking along the sidewalk, unaware of the danger that lingered in the shadows around the city. A rival gang had been scouting the area, and Luca's instincts immediately shifted to vigilance. Without thinking, he followed her at a distance, careful to remain unseen. There was something in the way she moved, confident yet gentle, that made him feel an unfamiliar pull. When one of the men loitering near the street made a sudden move, Luca intervened quietly and efficiently, ensuring she passed without noticing. Sofia sensed nothing at first, her thoughts still on her patients and the gentle rhythm of the city around her. It was only when she felt a shadow beside her that she looked up and froze. Luca stood there, the streetlight catching the sharp angles of his face, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow to the space between them. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm, but carrying an edge that hinted at authority. Sofia blinked, her heart beating a little faster. "Yes, thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves inside her. Luca's eyes studied her, noticing the quiet courage in her expression and the softness that contrasted with the harsh world he inhabited. "You do not belong out here alone at this hour," he said. There was no accusation in his tone, only concern. "I am careful," Sofia replied, though she did not mention that the city often felt dangerous even in daylight. She sensed that this man was not ordinary, and that his concern was genuine in a way she did not expect. A pause hung between them, charged with an unspoken understanding. Luca felt the first cracks in the armor he had built around himself. He had never felt drawn to someone in this way, and it both unsettled and intrigued him. Sofia, on the other hand, felt a strange warmth at the way he regarded her, a mixture of caution and intensity that she could not ignore. "Perhaps we will meet again," Luca said, turning to leave. His words were simple, yet the promise lingered in the air. Sofia watched him disappear into the night, her curiosity ignited. She did not know who he truly was or what world he commanded, yet she felt a connection she could not explain. In the distance, Luca paused for a moment and glanced back, the memory of her unafraid gaze lingering in his mind. Neither realized that this brief encounter would mark the beginning of a bond that would challenge them both, testing their courage, hearts, and the possibility of love in a world where trust was rare. Chapter 3. Fragile trust. Sofia could not stop thinking about the man she had met twice now, the one with eyes that seemed to look straight through her. Each day at the clinic, she found herself distracted, imagining his voice, the quiet intensity of his presence, and the subtle kindness he had shown. She reminded herself that she barely knew him, and that the city was full of people whose lives carried shadows she could never understand. Yet a curious pull kept tugging at her heart. Luca, in contrast, returned to his world of meetings and negotiations, yet the memory of Sofia led like a light in the darkness. He found himself observing the streets he controlled with more awareness, thinking about how to ensure her safety without exposing himself. He wanted to know more about her, yet he feared revealing the truth about his life. Vulnerability had always been a weakness, and yet with Sofia, it felt necessary, almost inevitable. Their paths crossed again at a charity gala hosted for the clinic. Luca had attended on behalf of a wealthy associate, and Sofia was organizing the event. When their eyes met across the room, a quiet recognition passed between them. He approached with measured steps, and she greeted him with a warm but cautious smile. "You are here again," Sofia said softly, her curiosity carefully restrained. "I am," Luca replied, his gaze steady. "It seems I have more reason to be here than I realized." There was no boast in his words, only an unspoken acknowledgement of the pull that neither could deny. As the evening unfolded, Luca remained a careful presence by her side. He offered small gestures of attention, listening when she spoke, showing subtle consideration in ways she noticed even she could not name them. Sofia began to see that behind his controlled exterior, there were glimpses of tenderness, moments that contradicted the rumors she had once heard about the man known as Luca Moretti. Despite her intrigue, Sofia could not ignore the inconsistencies she sensed. There were moments when he seemed to vanish into a world of shadows, brief expressions that hinted at danger and secrets. Her instincts told her that the man before her was not as simple as he appeared, yet she also saw the genuine care he offered in the spaces between those moments. Luca, aware of her cautious observation, decided to test the fragile boundaries of trust. He shared small, carefully chosen details about himself, revealing enough to invite curiosity without risking exposure. Sofia responded with patience and warmth, her empathy bridging the gap that fear and suspicion might have widened. By the end of the night, an unspoken understanding had formed. Luca could not resist the growing pull toward her, and Sofia could not deny the fascination and concern she felt for him. Both recognized that trust would be delicate, easily broken, yet both also sensed that this connection was worth the risk. As they parted that evening, each carried the quiet weight of curiosity, the fragile beginnings of trust, and the undeniable knowledge that their lives were beginning to intertwine in ways neither could have anticipated. Chapter 4. Close call. Sofia had grown used to the rhythm of her days, the predictable flow of patience, paperwork, and quiet moments of reflection. Yet on this particular afternoon, the air felt charged with a subtle tension she could not place. She was walking back from the clinic, delivering supplies to a nearby shelter, when she noticed a group of men lingering near the street corner. Their presence alone made her instincts flare, though she could not see any immediate danger. Luca had been tracking movements in his city that day, following whispers of a rival gang testing boundaries in areas near the clinic. When he spotted the same men near Sofia's path, he acted without hesitation. The world he navigated so easily was one of shadows, threats, and quick decisions. Yet protecting her felt more urgent than any other matter in his life. He intercepted the group quietly, his presence commanding and precise. A few sharp words and gestures were enough to send the men dispersing, leaving no trace of confrontation behind. Sofia, unaware of the danger, had continued walking until she felt a sudden presence beside her. She looked up and saw Luca standing silently, his sharp gaze scanning the street as if expecting something more. "You should not be out here alone," he said, his voice low and measured. His concern was unmistakable, and it struck her in a way she had not expected. Sofia hesitated, her pulse quickening. "I am careful," she said, trying to maintain her calm, though the unease in her chest refused to settle. Luca's expression softened slightly as he studied her. "Careful is not always enough," he said. His words carried weight beyond the warning. There was a sincerity in them that hinted at the depth of his feelings. In that moment, Sofia began to understand that Luca was not merely a man of reputation and fear. Beneath the ruthless exterior, there was a side of him capable of selfless care. She saw a vulnerability in the way he stood, ready to act without hesitation to ensure her safety. It was a glimpse into a world few could enter, and it left her both unsettled and intrigued. The encounter ended with a simple nod from Luca before he vanished into the shadows of the city. Sofia could not explain the flutter in her chest or the lingering impression of his protective presence. She walked home with a mixture of awe and apprehension, realizing that the man she had glimpsed was unlike anyone she had ever known. For Luca, the moment lingered longer. Protecting her had felt instinctual, necessary in a way that went beyond duty or desire for control. He was beginning to see that his life, once governed solely by power and fear, could be touched by something softer, something worth protecting beyond loyalty or territory. That night, both carried the silent acknowledgement that their lives were inching closer together, bound by danger, curiosity, and a growing sense of connection he had expected, but both could no longer deny. Chapter 5. Confessions and Secrets. Late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of the small cafe, where Luca had asked Sofia to meet him. It was a neutral space, quiet and removed from the intensity of the city, a place where the ordinary clashed with the extraordinary. Sofia arrived first, nervously adjusting the sleeve of her blouse as she scanned the room. Her heart had been racing, ever since Luca had suggested the meeting, a mix of curiosity and unease stirring within her. Luca arrived shortly after, moving with his usual controlled precision. There was a tension around him, subtle yet undeniable, that made Sofia notice for the first time how much weight he carried on his shoulders. He gave her a brief nod and seated himself across from her. His gaze softened slightly, a rare glimpse of the man behind the reputation. "I wanted to talk," Luca said, his voice lower than usual, almost hesitant. "About who I am, about what I have done." Sofia's chest tightened. She had sensed layers beneath his exterior, but hearing him acknowledge them openly made the world feel fragile and raw. "I am listening," she said softly, offering a calm presence. Luca leaned back, taking a deep breath before beginning. He spoke of his past, the choices that had led him to power, and the consequences that haunted him. He told her about the lives he had affected, the friends lost, and the enemies made. His words were careful, not seeking absolution, but seeking understanding. Sofia listened without interruption. She could feel the weight of his history, the burden he carried with every decision. When he finished, she reached out and placed a hand over his, a gesture of quiet compassion. "You are not defined solely by your past," she said. "The man in front of me is more than the mistakes you have made." Luca's eyes lingered on her hand, and for a moment, he allowed himself to feel the warmth of her touch. He had been so accustomed to calculating and controlling every situation that this simple act of trust felt revolutionary. The connection between them deepened, fragile yet undeniable, as he realized that someone could see him as human than as a symbol of power and fear. They shared a quiet silence after that, a moment suspended in the bustling cafe. Words were unnecessary, because the understanding between them spoke louder than anything else. Sofia felt the intensity of his vulnerability and responded with a steady presence, showing him that openness was not weakness. As they parted that evening, Luca walked her to her car, glancing at her with a mixture of admiration and tentative hope. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for seeing me as I am." Sofia smiled softly, feeling the resonance of trust growing between them. "It is easier to see someone when they allow you to," she replied. That night, both carried the knowledge that a delicate bond had been formed. Luca had exposed a piece of his soul, and Sofia had responded with understanding and compassion. They were no longer simply two people who crossed paths by chance. They were beginning a journey of trust, connection, and the slow unraveling of walls that had protected them both for far too long. Chapter 6, Temptation and Tension. The days that followed their meeting at the cafe were filled with small, lingering thoughts of one another. Sofia found herself replaying Luca's words in her mind, the rare softness behind his commanding presence. She questioned the stirring in her heart, a mixture of curiosity, attraction, and caution that she could not easily ignore. Her work at the clinic had always grounded her, but now it seemed that every corner of the city reminded her of him. Luca, in turn, could not concentrate on the matters of his empire. Decisions that once seemed routine now felt hollow without her presence to anchor him. His men noticed a change, subtle though unmistakable, in the way he carried himself. He was calculating and careful as ever, yet there was a tension in his gaze, a vulnerability he had not allowed himself in years. He wanted to be near her, to speak with her, yet the risk of exposing her to his world made the thought nearly unbearable. Their next encounter came unexpectedly at a charity fundraiser. Sofia had been arranging supplies for an upcoming project when Luca arrived, offering a courteous smile that sent a familiar warmth through her. He approached her with deliberate care, aware of the eyes around them and the gossip that could follow. "You look well," Luca said, his voice low and steady. There was an unspoken challenge in his tone, a mixture of desire and restraint. Sofia felt her pulse quicken. "Thank you. And you?" she asked, attempting casualness, though her heart betrayed her calm exterior. They walked together through the crowd, sharing small talk that carried the weight of something unspoken. Each glance, each subtle touch of his hand against hers, was filled with tension. Sofia felt drawn to him, wary of the consequences. Luca could see the hesitation in her eyes, and it only fueled the desire to protect her while also allowing himself to inch closer. The pull between them became harder to ignore. When Luca's hand brushed against hers while pointing out a display, Sofia froze. The electricity between them was palpable, and neither could deny the growing attraction. At the same time, fear lingered on her side, a quiet voice reminding her of the dangers she did not fully understand. "I should not be tempting fate," Luca murmured, almost to himself, as his eyes searched hers. There was a vulnerability in his admission, a crack in the armor he had built for so long. Sofia's voice was gentle but firm. "And yet you do," she replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. Her words carried more than curiosity. They carried understanding, acknowledgement, and the silent admission that she felt the same pull he did. For a moment, the world around them faded. It was just the two of them, caught in the tension between desire and caution, longing and restraint. Both recognized that giving in would be dangerous, yet resisting felt equally impossible. As the evening ended, they parted with lingering looks, the unspoken promise of more hanging in the air. Each walked away with the knowledge that temptation was no longer a fleeting thought. It was a force that would shape their connection, challenge their fears, and demand choices neither could ignore. Chapter 8. Redemption begins. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Luca's office, casting long, warm stripes across the polished floor. For the first time in years, he did not feel the familiar rush of control or the hunger for power that had consumed him. His thoughts were consumed by one person, and the weight of his responsibilities now included a new mission, protecting her and proving that he could be more than the man his reputation dictated. Sofia arrived at the clinic that day, unaware that Luca had been thinking about her all morning. She noticed a quiet change in her own heartbeat when she received his message, a simple request to meet and discuss something important. There was a vulnerability in the words, subtle yet undeniable, and it stirred a mixture of curiosity and hope within her. When they met, Luca did not rush. He let her speak first, letting the quiet intimacy of shared presence replace the tension that had defined their encounters before. Then he spoke, carefully and deliberately. "I cannot promise the past will be erased," he said, "but I can promise that I will do everything to change the future, to keep you safe, and to be worthy of your trust." Sofia felt a warmth in her chest at his words. She had seen hints of this before, moments of tenderness that seemed fleeting, but now they were deliberate and sustained. He was choosing vulnerability, and with it, he invited her into a world she had glimpsed only in fragments. Over the following days, Luca demonstrated his commitment through small but significant acts. He ensured that threats were neutralized before reaching her. He listened more than he commanded, and he allowed her presence to soften the edges of his daily life. Each interaction carried intention, each smile a bridge between fear and hope, between power and tenderness. Sofia, in turn, responded with her own trust, cautiously extending the hand he had asked her to take. She saw the effort in his every action and recognized the man beneath the layers of control and reputation. In quiet moments, their hands brushed, their eyes lingered, and the gentle exchange of care became a language only they understood. Evenings became moments of reflection. Luca shared pieces of his world that were safe to reveal, allowing her glimpses of his struggles and victories. She shared her own fears and hopes, creating a rhythm of understanding and support that neither had experienced before. In these moments, the walls around Luca's heart began to crumble, not entirely, but enough to allow light and love to enter. By the end of the week, both recognized a shift in their relationship. Luca's gestures were no longer just about protection. They were about connection, about building a life where tenderness could coexist with strength. Sofia's trust had become a balm for his hardened soul, and he was learning that love could be a force more powerful than fear, more enduring than control. As they parted that evening, Luca's gaze held a quiet promise. "We're just beginning," he said softly. Sofia's heart responded in kind, a mixture of hope and courage, ready to meet the journey ahead. Redemption had begun, not as a declaration, but as a living, breathing choice made every day through acts of care, courage, and unwavering commitment. Chapter 9. Healing together. Quiet mornings at the clinic had become a comfort for both Sofia and Luca. The city outside moved with its usual chaos, but inside their shared moments felt like a sanctuary. Luca arrived less as a figure of fear, and more as a man seeking solace, and Sofia found herself drawn to the gentle glimpses of humanity he revealed. They worked together in small ways, from organizing supplies to walking through the neighborhood, checking on patients who could not leave their homes. These ordinary acts held extraordinary meaning for them both. Luca learned patience, listening, without calculating every response, while Sofia discovered the depth of his care and the sincerity of his intentions. Yet challenges still surfaced. Luca struggled with impulses from his past, flashes of anger and old habits threatening the delicate balance he had built. On one afternoon, An argument erupted over a minor misunderstanding, and the tension between them flared. Sofia watched him, her eyes steady, refusing to recoil. "I know who you are and who you are trying to be," she said softly. "I am not afraid of the man you are, but I believe in the man you are becoming." Her words reached him in a way that no command or order ever had. Luca's chest tightened, and for the first time, he allowed himself to acknowledge the messiness of his emotions. He apologized sincerely, not just for the words, but for the walls he had maintained for so long. The act of vulnerability deepened their connection, creating a bond that was no longer fragile but resilient. Together, they faced the remnants of threats from Luca's world. He taught her how to navigate the dangers without losing herself, and she reminded him that there was more to life than power and survival. In each other's presence, they discovered that healing was not instantaneous, but a continuous journey. Each moment of honesty, each shared smile, each touch held significance that fortified their growing trust. Evenings became quiet rituals of reflection. They shared their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. Luca began to dream not just of control and respect, but of a life where tenderness and love could flourish alongside responsibility and loyalty. Sofia encouraged him to embrace the softer parts of himself, showing him that strength was not diminished by kindness or care. By the end of the chapter, both felt the profound impact of healing together. Luca was no longer just a man burdened by his past, and Sofia was no longer merely a witness to his transformation. They had become partners in the truest sense, supporting each other through fear, doubt, and hope. Their connection had evolved into a safe space, a place where love could flourish even in the shadow of a dangerous world. As they stood together, on a quiet evening, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, Luca reached for Sofia's hand. "We are stronger together," he said, and she smiled, knowing that their shared journey had already begun to reshape both of their lives in ways they never could have imagined. Chapter 10. A tender future. Red City was quiet that morning, the streets bathed in the soft glow of sunrise. Luca stood on the balcony of his penthouse, his eyes tracing the familiar skyline. For the first time in years, he did not feel the sharp edge of tension or the weight of unending vigilance pressing on him. There was a calmness, a rare and precious stillness, that came from knowing the woman he loved was safe, and that the life he was building could be different. Sofia joined him, her presence like sunlight breaking through the shadows of his past. She leaned against the railing beside him, her hand brushing against his, a small yet deliberate touch that spoke volumes of trust and closeness they shared. A quiet smile, the kind that needed no words, a reassurance that they had endured the trials of danger and fear together and emerged stronger. Luca reflected on how far he had come. He had once been a man defined by power, fear, and solitude, but now he was a man shaped by love, hope, and vulnerability. Every choice he had made to protect Sofia, every step toward redemption, had brought him here to a place where tenderness could exist alongside strength, and loyalty was matched by genuine care. Sofia looked at him, her eyes filled with admiration and understanding. "You have changed," she said softly. "Not just for me, but for yourself," he nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle in his chest. "And I will continue to change," he replied. "I am not perfect, but I am trying, and with you by my side, I can be better." They turned their gaze to the city below, knowing that challenges would never fully disappear. Rivalries, responsibilities, and the echoes of the past remained, but neither felt the same fear. They had built a foundation of trust, love, and understanding that would carry them through whatever storms might come. Later that day, they walked through the streets of the neighborhood together, blending seamlessly with the life around them. Luca moved with a relaxed confidence, no longer the untouchable king of shadows, but a man who had embraced vulnerability and love. Sofia walked beside him, her hand in his, feeling the steady beat of a heart that had learned to care as deeply as it could command. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they paused at a small park where children played and neighbors greeted one another warmly. Luca watched Sofia laugh at something one of the children said, and he realized that moments like this, ordinary, simple, filled with life, were what he had been missing all along. Love had softened him, trust had grounded him, and together they had found a tenderness neither had imagined possible. In that quiet moment, with the city alive around them and the future stretching ahead, Luca and Sofia embraced not just each other, but the life they had fought to create. He was no longer just a feared Mafia king. He was a man redeemed, a man capable of love, gentleness, and hope. And she was the anchor that had made it all possible. Their hands intertwined, their hearts aligned, and together they stepped forward into a future full of promise, proving that even the hardest hearts could find tenderness, even in a world built on shadows.